Good afternoon, or salut from Paris, where IF4 is currently holding a conference on education in arts and humanities, which is part of our European series. I am joined here by Professor Jun Arima and Ambassador Takehiro Kano. Thank you for being here. I would like to ask you to briefly introduce yourselves and what you do.
Okay, thank you for the invitation to this very interesting conference. I really enjoyed it. I'm currently serving as a permanent delegate of Japan to UNESCO and representing the government of Japan to deal with all kinds of our cooperation through UNESCO.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this exciting conference. I'm now teaching at the University of Tokyo, Energy and Environment Policies. And before coming to Tokyo University, I was working for METI, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, and about 2/3 of my whole career has been devoted to international energy collaboration and also climate change issues.
So you were both part of a panel presentation we just finished. Could you briefly explain to us what this panel was about and what was your part in the panel?
As I understand, the panel was supposed to encourage the discussion on how we can reconstruct or revitalize the multilateralism in a current very volatile and polarized world. And we have a very good stimulative discussion on how to do it. From my part, I talked about the history and the nature of the UNESCO, my current organization, and the emphasize the importance of engaging the not just government officials but also the stakeholders outside the government, and particularly emphasize the importance of intellectual collaboration, which has a long history and the DNA of UNESCO.
And from my side, I mainly talked about climate change negotiation. Actually, I came from Bonn to participate in this conference because in Bonn, there was a preparatory negotiation coming up to COP29 to be held in Baku, Azerbaijan this year. And the current status of climate negotiations is also very much difficult, characterized with North-South confrontation. And I enumerated various, difficulties entailing climate negotiation. But from my perspective, the role of education is quite important because ultimately climate action needs to be supported by general public. So in order to change people's perception about climate actions, the education needs to play a very much important role. But education takes time for changing people's psyche. So therefore, I also pointed out the importance of pragmatism for dealing with climate change issues, because there are many issues the global community needs to tackle, not only climate change but also poverty eradication and also decent education and decent healthcare and so on. So we cannot devote whole resources to climate change mitigation alone. So we need to be a bit more pragmatic for dealing with climate change. That is what I have emphasized today.
From what you're saying, we are at a very turning point when it comes to how we negotiate about climate change and about cultural and educational cooperation. Because you're both coming from a little bit different backgrounds as a diplomat and as an academic, why, from an academic perspective, there are many gaps in how institutions think and how the people think. So from an academic perspective, why does this gap exist? And from a political or diplomatic perspective, what is the reason for that?
What I touched upon in the discussion is that we have to recognize that we are living in a very different world. The world which was familiar to us in the last 30 years, which is namely the post-Cold War period. At the beginning, there are much more euphoria about the multilateralism, but that's no longer the case. And Secretary General of the Guterres of the United Nations said that post-Cold War period is over. And there are various factors. But we also recognize the growing role of the global south in in making decisions of it. So in order to reconstruct the international organizations which are more suitable to the current international community, we may have to consider bridging the gap by accommodating more in a constructive way the voices of the global south. That's what I emphasize.
Likewise, in order to solve global climate issues, the developing countries, in particular emerging economies, needs to be on the same page with developed countries. So to do so, we need to recognize the reality, in particular in Asian emerging economies, and their energy structure and their, say, preoccupation and so forth. So imposing only one model from the viewpoint of developed countries is regarded as eco-colonialism from those countries. So we need to, acknowledge their specific needs, and also we need to discuss more constructively, recognizing the financial needs felt in many developing countries. So that's the only way for, say, paving the way for more, constructive solution towards global climate issues.
So you're both mentioning more intercultural understanding and more understanding between different nation states and members. To bring it back to the education part and why that's important, you both are Japanese nationals. You have a lot of experience in Japan. How is education in Japan different from what you have witnessed here in France? Because students here in France are differently educated about climate change and about culture and sports and research, and that's also reflected within academia, how European academia works and how, for example, Asian academia works. What are the differences you notice between France and Japan?
That's maybe the most difficult question, because I was educated a long time ago in Japan, but also I had a chance to be educated in the UK, and also my children had the experience of being educated in Austria, and now my youngest daughter is in Paris. So I have a chance to recognize some sort of commonalities as well as the differences of the educational system. Maybe still my understanding is that the Japanese education system still emphasizes the importance of accumulating the knowledge more in a static way without having much opportunity to present their own opinions and views in a persuasive way. Whereas in the European countries, the emphasis seems to be given more on the presentation and so forth, oral communications, not necessarily the much knowledge. So sometimes when we are engaging in the negotiations and talks, at one point that we feel a little bit taken aback by the very strong arguments and so forth. But as time goes by, when we get used to that, we can have the chance to speak back. So maybe that's my limited sort of experience of sensing the difference of the education system between two countries.
Unlike Kano-san, I was never educated outside of Japan. But I'm teaching at the university, and in my class there are so many foreign students and also some Japanese students. And looking at both of them, the clear difference is foreign students tend to be very much, outspoken sometimes in certain argument, and they are very much ready to counter-argue to what professor says. And I very much welcome, but on the other hand, Japanese students tend to be very much silent, very much eager to digest what is taught by professors. So that must be reflecting the education they have got when they were young. So I think the Japanese education, we should place more emphasis on, say, debate or presentation, or rather than just memorizing, the various knowledge. But students need to be more, how can I say, engaged in discussion and constructive discussion. So that kind of training is very much important, so that Japanese young generation can participate in various international dialogue or discussion, and to make them heard in the international, say, conference or negotiation.
Just because I'm taking Japan in Europe now as an example for the sake of conversation, but does the lack of negotiation skills or argument formation mean that Japanese young people are less sensitized to cultural topics or climate change topics?
Situation seems to be changing because there are so many returnees from foreign countries among Japanese students. So they are very much trained in American education or British education or French education. So they are very much active in participating in discussion in my class. So I think if that kind of Japanese students increase in their visibility in Japanese younger generation, then situation could change. But other than that, also Japanese education should, say, devote more energy for discussion or presentation skills and so on, in English, hopefully.
Yes, probably I think the environment determines what is the best way of learning. And also when the students are in a situation where they have to work with the students of different nationalities and different cultural backgrounds, they have no choice but to communicate with them. And also they have to make themselves heard. Whereas in mostly Japanese-only situations, they don't have to do it. Rather than that, they rather more trained to read the lips and read the room, or the situation of the room, rather than more eloquently communicate with others. Sometimes the eloquent communication may be negatively effective in the Japanese-only environment. So I think that it depends on the environment, and if they are given, the Japanese students and the youngsters are given a chance where they have no choice but to communicate with other people of different nationalities and backgrounds, I think Japanese youngsters and students have good capacity and potential to communicate.
The next question, it's in line with younger generations. There's a lot of apprehension towards international institutions nowadays, that they talk about very aspirational agendas, changing the climate, preserving culture and stuff. And then students in the classroom, they come back and say, I don't care about these things. They don't affect my everyday life. Why should I care?
What can we do?
Yeah, and that is exactly the role of education, because that might not affect their daily life. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but that will definitely impact their future generation, their son or their grandchildren. So, even though the climate change, for example, does not affect their daily life now, but if they are attentive about their future generation, then they need to start doing something. So that is the role of education, and also I think I very much hope that they could also be engaged in various seminar or workshop or something to increase their awareness on various international issues. So, silo mentality, just living in Japan and it is good so long as my daily life is fine. But we should recognize that we are living in the globe, and the starship Earth, right? So and climate change is a global issue, and only Japan cannot solve this problem. We need genuine international collaboration. So that kind of awareness building is the role of education.
Yes, education is very important, as Arima-san mentioned. It's not just for the youngsters, but also all generations. And if I take the another sectors, such as national security, I think that the recent situations happening in Ukrainian situations caused by Russia's full-scale aggression did sensitize not just people in Europe, but also people in Japan as well. In addition to the already assertive actions by North Korea or China. Before that, there's a kind of a sense of being given that the peace and security is something given to them, and not much having to pay a cost for it. So not just younger generation, but also older generations, that they are not much sensitized to the security issues. But that's changing because of the North Korea or China, and most recently Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So security or peace is not something that we can take for granted. So we have to do something to prepare to ensuring the peace and security. So I think that the education and the changing sort of a situation did necessitate the people's awareness.
So, which brings me to my final question.
Yeah.
We all have a part to play in negotiating for our future. So negotiations will become more, multi-sectoral, and more industries and more stakeholders and NGOs and academia and civil society. In this case, how does the future of international cooperation look like?
Yeah, in particular in the climate change, international collaboration is becoming more and more multi-layered international collaboration. In the past, we were talking about government-to-government negotiation, but now the driver for climate change mitigation are very much multifaceted, such as the people on the street, and also industry, academia, financial institutions. All of them are participating to some extent in the endeavor for combating climate change. So I think Paris Agreement, very good thing about Paris Agreement is home for multi-stakeholder collaboration. So under big umbrella of Paris Agreement, many things are going on. So we should further promote such a multi-layered collaboration. And I think that kind of momentum is very much strong since 2015, in particular after 2020.
To take the example of the UNESCO, which I'm currently working on, is quite multi-sectoral international organizations. And related to the climate change, the science part deal with the oceanography or hydrology. There are lots of UNESCO-sponsored meetings where the academics, experts in those sectors gather to discuss on the natural disasters and so forth. And because of the multi-sectoral nature of the UNESCO, for example, the issues like educational, the environmental education, or the how to tackle the impact of the climate change upon the cultural heritage, for example, those are the things can be best dealt with by UNESCO because it covers the education as well as the culture. And also, in addition to those three sectors, education, science, and culture, UNESCO also deals with the communication and information, so including the journalism. So the role of journalism is also the area where the UNESCO is covering. So because of that multi-sectoral nature, UNESCO can set some sort of model and could be more important in the international collaboration in a multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral way. But also, of course, UNESCO cannot do it alone. It has to align itself with the wider UN system or other international organization to tackle the global agenda effectively. So currently in UN in New York, there is an ongoing discussion for the post-2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And at the future summit in September this year, there will be a document called the Pact for the Future will be made. And that will show the vision for the post-2030 agenda. And the negotiation will be expected in the coming years. And to that process, UNESCO is willing to align itself to that, so that UNESCO's mandate can better connect it with the other functions of the international organizations.
Very interesting developments happening right now, and closing on a positive note that maybe processes are becoming more democratic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.